All right, just because you're making a garment that has a loose hem, meaning it's not attached to a skirt like a dress or a jumpsuit, and it's not fitted, it's looser, it's supposed to just maybe flow and skim across your body. Just because your garment's loose doesn't mean that you're not still dealing with this scooped back waist issue where you've picked the size that should measure your hip, and it does measure, so why doesn't it fit you? And it's just because we need more in the back. Usually with this adjustment, if you have something like a hip tilt or sway back, what happens is your posture pushes up on the hem of the garment. And so we have a couple of options. We can enlarge the circumference here so that we can get this back hanging loose and skimming the hip there, add it all the way to here. Or we can shorten it so that when we are wearing it and we've got our side seam sewn, it's not going to get hung up on our hip down there. So I'm going to show you how to do this on something like this with the shirt tail hem, which is really common, and other garments that aren't fitted, hang loose, and can benefit from either being shortened or enlarged across the hip. So if you want to do either one of those, I want you to make a note of how much you think you need to get rid of. So if you're feeling like right here, if I want to get to my side seam here, I'd have to shorten it quite a bit, probably like this much. Look at that, in order to get it to hang free of my hip. Now, if you don't want to shorten it that much, maybe you want to enlarge it, what I would do is find the center of your garment and then see how much we can add here. And I'm just gonna slice up to the armhole here, like that. And you can already see, look at that, it's hanging free of the body there. It's not hung up. We can pull this over. That's quite a bit we would need to add to each side. So make sure that you check, like this right here would be my center. So it's more about that much. All right, so make a note of how much you need to enlarge it or shorten it, and I'm gonna show you how to do both. All right, so we want to fix this scooped back waist issue on looser fitting garments. And there's pretty much only a couple of things we can do. We can shorten it and get it above the point that it's getting hung up, or we can make it larger across the back only. Because theoretically, it probably is the right total circumference for you. It's just not distributed the way you need it. So what we need to do is increase this back circumference here, and we can do this a few different ways, but I'm going to show you a way that just doesn't alter any seams so that it's probably a little faster. All right, so here we have our yoke back, and this is the amount that we want to add. So when you're measuring this amount here, remember what I told you about measuring straight across. Now, if you measure like this at an angle, make sure that when you make your slice, you measure at the same angle, which is kind of tricky to do. I'm gonna go right down here to the hem and go straight across the hem. So I'm looking at this point, going across to this point here. So let's get our pattern piece. Now, a lot of people will just add to the side seam, myself included sometimes, but if you are a little bit nervous about having to make sure your side seam will still match the one it sews to, you can just slice right alongside of it. So we're just gonna go right here, and we're gonna go up to right here at the seam. Now I don't have seam allowance on this pattern piece here. This right here is where your hinge is going to end. So if you have a seam allowance past this point, it ends right there at the seam line. And we need a little piece of paper to slip under here. We're going to secure the shirt side of this cut. And now we're going to measure across the bottom and kick this out the amount that we need to kick it out. And one thing we can do is check it out and see, because now I'm sort of doubting my measurement here. So if I were to line up my center back fold there, and kind of go, all right, yeah, that's roughly where I wanted it. So perfect. So now we need to blend this shirt tail hem, if that's what we're working on. Let's find our seam line here, just like that. And now we have, and for a shirt tail hem, you can choose if you want to bring this wider lower section over more, like this. Maybe you want to scoop it out further away. It just depends. So the reason that you have this little scoop up on a shirt tail hem is so that it fits over the hips when it's tucked in. So it's decreasing that amount right there. It's sort of the akin to having a vent there or a slit in the side seam. Instead of doing that, they've created this little swoop so that it's going above the hips when it's tucked in, and there's less fabric there kind of collecting on the hip bones on the side seams there. All right, so now we have kicked out and created a larger circumference. Let's look at the other side. Look at that, that looks really nice. So I would check to make sure that it still sews to your side seam of your front. And that's all the changes you really need to make, is making sure that your transition at your side seam still works and that the seams will sew together. And now you've increased that hem circumference so that it won't get hung up on your hips back there. Now you may need to decrease the front circumference because now that you've added to this, it might be a little too big in the front, so you may have to make that adjustment. All right, so let's say that you have a loose garment, no shaping, no princess seams, no darts, no nothing. It's longer, it goes to that hip area, and it's doing the exact same thing. It's kind of pooling there. Now you have those two options. You can shorten it like we did in the back waist fitted to the waist video, or you can also increase the circumference just like we did with the shirt tail. So I would do the same thing for cut-on sleeves, raglans. It does not matter what armhole you're doing. You're only gonna do this on garments that don't have darts and don't have princess seams. It's pretty easy, just slicing up to your armhole there. So on the cut-on sleeve, the reason why I got this one is that there's no clear place where that armhole ends, and that's okay. We can still kind of eyeball where we want this. So what I would do is kind of pick a place on here where it starts to curve, and I would go right below that. So if I were to, let's draw in our seam allowance here, so we know where we are, just like that. So I think that I would pick about right here to make my hinge. So we'll cut up there and then cut up to that spot. And now we can kick this out, put a little piece of paper back here. We can secure the main part of the shirt. And now we can kick this out whatever we need. Maybe we need more paper than what I gave it. But you can see that this still creates a nice curve there. What may happen is that when you go to sew it, it'll feel a little bit like it's not the exact same silhouette anymore. But the thing is, the length of the seam hasn't changed, and you need this extra volume back here. It'll still sew together, and it won't be that tricky. If you need to smooth out any points that are created, if you've kicked this out a lot, you can do so. And then we haven't changed our side seam. So you can make sure that you still have your transition, but we can see that this is where our seam line is right here. We'll put a little piece of paper here. We're not really gonna add to it, but it'll at least be a little bit easier to see. We need to get to here, right? And now we have still that transition to sew to the side seam, and we haven't changed our back length. We've increased our hem circumference. We haven't changed our side seam. And this will work on garments on the fold or with a center back seam. This doesn't really affect that area there. You can do it on raglans and whatever armholes that you have. So this change was for garments that are loose at the hem. They're pooling at your center back waist. They don't have any fitted seams like princess seams or darts. And you just need to increase that back hem circumference without changing anything else. All right, good luck. I hope you're enjoying my Fitopedia fitting series, and if you want to get more fitting tutorials, just check the description. There's going to be links to more, and if you would like a printed version of these mini tutorials, just check the description or look under the video, and eventually you'll be able to make your own little Fitopedia booklet, and it'll be a really great, quick, easy reference to how to diagnose and fit the issue that you're working on. So I hope you're getting a lot out of the series. Please let me know, like, comment, and subscribe, and follow along for more. Thanks for watching.